Hey everyone, my name is Varush and welcome to my channel. I hope you guys are doing well today. I'm excited to do this reading for us. We're going to talk about Saturn's transit through Aquarius today as it's reaching its anaretic degree. So the anaretic degree is the last degree of each sign. It's the 29th degree, and it's often considered the culmination point, the punchline, the outcome. And this time around, Saturn's transit through Aquarius has been very, very important. So it makes sense for us to take a look back and see what exactly happened since 2020 when it entered Aquarius. It's been huge for us globally, but it's also important for us personally. Many astrologers have really been focused on the mundane, including myself, which is world events astrology, but it actually, in my opinion, the world events astrology reflects down to us and it affects our personal lives as well. So this is about how we are contending with world events. Today we're going to talk hopefully on a more personal level as to how this will impact you or how that has impacted you. And my goal here is to show you three major phases of this transit as it happened, explain them to you and see how they resonate and see if you can see the pattern for yourself. So it's a good idea to grab some pen, paper. If you have a notes app in your phone, you can use that, because I'm going to be throwing dates at you or giving you some dates in astrology today. So maybe you can write those down and see if you can identify those things in your life. Okay, so we're going to do an all sign after. And in the meantime, I just want to tell you about the astrology because it's really big. Saturn in Aquarius is a huge transit. Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, and it rules the previous sign Capricorn as well. So Saturn has been in rulership between these two signs for 5 years. And so this happens only once every 25 years. Saturn is the only planet that rules adjacent signs like this. And so very, very important moment. We know what's happened globally, right? We had a global meltdown. Suddenly there's reprioritization of different features and functions of government. Who's who and what's what has been completely turned upside down. We've been pushed into separation from each other. There's been the social distancing, of course, and self-isolating in order to protect ourselves. But there's also been decoupling, which is a less familiar term, which is associated with the perceived end of globalization. This is a very arguable sort of statement. And decoupling suggests that countries that were once in agreement are no longer in agreement. And the best example of this is, of course, Russia, because Russia has been taken out of the SWIFT system because of its invasion of Ukraine. And so all the supply for oil has stopped, right? So Western Europe particularly and Eastern Europe were dependent on Russian oil and fossil fuels to run its economies, and because of this, it's been completely severed. So that's a huge impact in Europe, but also globally. Food inflation has happened, right, as a byproduct of this decoupling as well, because it's not a smooth decoupling because there's a war. And so nitrogen that is used in growing different foods has been not available to the scale that it was before. And so therefore food prices have gone up. And there's a lot of arguing or discussing about what actually caused this, and they're valid arguments because there is something to say for people profiteering off of this. And this is another aspect of Saturn and Aquarius. People have gotten scared through the pandemic, and suddenly all these corporations, all these businesses, they started becoming pretty clever and pretty smart. So more and more people have, through lack mentality or through fear of loss, they've become predatory, right? So charging people for more things and being more aggressive, because we are in a phase in which there was a prolonged time in which there was significant peace. And I know that's not everywhere, but there was this perceived lull of peace in the world, or overall in the world, things were kind of going in a, people started feeling safe, right? And not everywhere, I know this. But then when the pandemic happened and the subsequent events have really woken people up to the complexity of our world and how the interconnections are. And a lot of people who may have thought there was just this lull and peace, maybe I will reframe it, not everyone thought that, but many people did, have been woken up. And now they're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not as easy out there, and some of these systems that benefited me are no longer benefiting me. So there's been a reprioritization of who has power and how, and all those different things. And how does that impact us is, the average person, the average normal person has had to contend with people stocking up houses, buying out different properties as investment properties, and therefore driving the price of housing up, causing other people not to be able to buy homes. Lots of different consequences. We know all of them, but the housing issue is really huge around the world. The price of housing has skyrocketed. But beyond that, a lot of people, like average people, have had to deal with a world that is more predatory. It's more self-serving now. It's more a world in which people are contending over perceived lack of resources for everybody. No longer are people assuming, I think a lot of people assume that there was enough resources to go around before, and now I think that there is this scavenger mentality that's going on. And so, especially at the corporate level, government, business, and so forth, there's been a very strong reorientation of priorities. And ideas such as democracy have been challenged, I think. It's safe to say, where, 5 years ago, the average person may have felt that their voice mattered, that they could change the system if they needed to. And now all these people in power who have the money, the resources, and corporations and business have made decisions on behalf of the rest of us that may not actually reflect that reality. So a lot of us may be waking up to the fact that people who they profited from us assuming that we had a voice, but in fact we've been proven wrong. And in these more tough situations or circumstances that are around now, we are being shown just how little effect we have as they tried to hoard, as they tried to centralize power. So for the individual person, the Saturn transit in Aquarius has been, I hope, an eye-opener. And so I hope that you figured out, a new trajectory. And if you're struggling still to adapt to that, that's what it's all about. So today we're going to talk about it. There's 3 phases, and maybe that will help you kind of start laying the foundation, the blueprint of how things are going to work now. So it is really that transition. So the crazy time happened when Saturn was in Capricorn, the real kind of sudden change of everything, the dynamics, right, of who's who and what's what. And then when Saturn entered Aquarius, we saw that centralization of power, centralization of authority, and suddenly the rules of the game started changing. And I think that came from lack mentality, from scavenger mentality, from people asserting their power, asserting their wealth in order to protect themselves from perceived threats. So that affected everybody else. And so the rest of us, the people dealing with it, have been living with the consequences of those decisions. And hiring, jobs and things like that, they've been highly impacted. We've seen mass layoffs, all of these things. Today's not about that, but it's about how that world dynamic or change. And I'm trying not to be political in saying who and what, because I think that it's an overall system change, not just a political thing of one party versus another. Overall, it's a large system change. And so today is all about focusing on how that impacts us. Okay. So Saturn started entering Aquarius on March 20th through the 21st, 2020, but then didn't actually enter Aquarius until December 17th, 2020. And so has been in the sign ever since. it reaches its anaretic degree on February 27th, so 2 days after I filmed this, and will stay in the sign in the anaretic degree till March 7th. So we have essentially a week and a couple days of Saturn in the 29th degree. While it's there, Mercury and Saturn will join. So this is a March 2nd chart, the day that they are joining. It's likely that everything that we are going to review today is going to reach some kind of outcome. There's going to be some kind of communication in your personal life about the mechanics of how that world structure around you impacts you. So and it's not going to be likely not going to be a surprise. On some level, you're going to know it's coming or it's going to be that way. And it's not necessarily going to be something that's groundbreaking, but it's going to be something that speaks to everything that's been happening since March 2020 or December 2020. I can't believe it's been 2.5 years already. So it's going to be an event, some kind of communication, some kind of letter, something being said that's going to articulate the circumstances that you're actually dealing with. So in other words, the world that you were living in before Saturn entered Capricorn, the one Saturn in Sag 2018, 2019, is no longer there. And this was the transition phase, and now we're in this whole new, brave new world. And we're in this whole new world, and so this is going to be valuable information, Mercury and Saturn on the 2nd of March, on what to do with it. Okay, so let's talk about the transitions. I don't want to make this too long, although there's a lot of information. I had the idea of I have a lot of information on this, but I don't want to make this heavy astrology because it's just tough on people. So a lot of people will get lost. I was wondering if members would like me to do like an in-depth review, or if we can do I could do a dedicated video for everyone on this. Today I want to do the all signs, so I do want to keep it kind of short. So let me know in the comments if you're interested in like a detailed review, if things are not clear, or if you feel like you are getting these phases. Remember, my time is limited, so we need to be selective into what we bring attention to. So maybe this is enough. Let me know if you want to know more, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now the first phase was in 2020. So I'll go back to 2020 in my little chart. And this is when Saturn entered Aquarius 2 times. So in March, and then the big entry point was in December. This first phase is really marked by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happened on December 20th, 2021, or December 21st, 2020, the winter solstice. So this, so Jupiter and Saturn form these conjunctions every 20 years or so. And so when these conjunctions happen, there is a period of, they mark like an epoch, a little phase that is marked by these interactions. And so with the entry of Saturn into Aquarius, we saw these conjunctions happen in the last stages of Capricorn, where the pandemic was really activated by the astrology, all the things that had happened there. And then the conjunction in December 21st, 2020, when Jupiter and Saturn joined in Aquarius at 1 degree of Aquarius, and sort of began the next 20 years until 2040, when the next conjunction happens. So this broke the pandemic cycle, which means that before Saturn entered Aquarius, or as it was transitioning, we were very in the mindset of the pandemic and all the things that were happening with regard to that. It was a first response moment. Oh, this is a good way to explain it. In Capricorn, it was a first response moment, and in Aquarius, it became the structural business side of it, how things will be managed. And we've definitely seen that. So when Saturn entered Aquarius, we saw, the centralization of government, people became divided as they had different views on what was happening or what was the best thing to do. And I would argue that it became much more authoritative. I don't want to use any other terms about that. You may feel your way about that, but I do feel as though suddenly our laissez-faire kind of easygoing attitude towards each other became on many levels much more, are you pulling your fair share? Is it, the idea of the impact of individual behaviors on the collective became central. And so here, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, like I said, is like a little period of 20 years. The last cycle began in Taurus in 2000 at 24 degrees of Taurus. And so this is the second point at which Jupiter and Saturn have joined since 2000. 2000 seems like a lifetime ago. And so the next time Jupiter and Saturn will join is in 2040, which is in Libra, in the sign of Libra. So we're essentially looking at this time period that began in 2020 to last until 2040. And your way of understanding that is look back to 2000 with the conjunction in Taurus and look at the 20-year period as what happened in your life between 2000 and 2020. It really does make sense in a lived experience sort of way. So try to see some of the nuance, because the point here is that we're really beginning a new cycle with Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. And so that's very important to bring in mind. There's a bigger change that's happening here as well. You notice that the last conjunction happened in Taurus, which was an earth sign. And so this marks the end of the conjunctions of the earth sign placements. So the last 20 years, 2000 to 2020, were still underneath the Jupiter-Saturn cycle in an earth sign. And here we have the beginning of a Jupiter-Saturn cycle in an air sign that will continue for 200 years. It's important to note that in 2060, there is going to be the following conjunction after 2040. There is going to be a conjunction really on the cusp of Gemini, 29th degree to the 0 degree. And the technical place where Saturn and Jupiter join is 0 degrees of Gemini. However, the conjunction with bigger planets always starts a few degrees before. So it's a hybrid conjunction. This means that a lot of the things that we are working through now, they're still going to pan out and taper out until 2080 actually, because that cycle is going to be 2060 to 2080. But for now, for our purposes, this 2020 conjunction is beginning this phase of 20 years. And if you're older than that, and you can remember like 1980 to 2000, you can see that as a very specific age and time, right? So 2000 to 2020 is really distinct, and now 2020 to 2040 is going to be very distinct with its own nuances. And we already see these themes of, the response to suddenly we don't want to be interconnected as much anymore. And hey, who's this guy? What does he want? And this idea of people in power suddenly not being so friendly and being more self-serving and being like, hey, I have the power to control this and I'm scared of my resources, so I'm going to wield my power a bit more now. I'm not saying it's like some extreme form of it, but we're seeing this shift from this focus on democracy and relaying information to people to a focus on, much more centralized power, much more focused on the people in power are much less relaying back to us, honestly. Not trying to stir the pot, just giving you this idea. And so, so the conjunction in 2020 began that. And let's see. Oh, and then there was another tangential conjunction that happened on March 7th, 2022. And that is the conjunction between Venus and Mars and they joined in the same degree as Jupiter and Saturn did a year before. And so this isn't at that time. Here, I'll show you the chart because it's not hard to show you. So just this past year, last year, we see this conjunction, and this is the 2nd of March 2022, but let me show you, by the 7th, they were joining at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is 1 degree off the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020. And so you see Saturn was already further up in Aquarius. However, if for your own information, look back to March 7th, 2022 and see what came out with that, because this is a marker. And especially with regard to personal astrology, around that date, in relation to the change of the rules around us, you may have noticed a personal change as well. So that's important as well. Okay, so that's the first phase, 2000, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I don't think we'll need to go through this. This is going really well so far. So hopefully this is going to be enough. Okay, second phase is the Uranus-Saturn square. We know about this, it's fresh, but it was in mostly 2021. And so let's go back and take a look at it. Okay, so the Saturn and Uranus square, here's Saturn, okay, and here's Uranus, happened 4 times, 3 times in 2021 and 1 time in 2022. Some people have been very saying, oh, it's only 3 times in 2021, because the last square between Uranus and Saturn in 2022 was not exact, but it was really, really close. And we already saw that it was a reconciling energy, in my opinion. So basically what happened was Saturn was in Aquarius and Uranus was in Taurus. And then it started... So you saw the initiation energy of this 20-year cycle between Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, and the square between Saturn and Uranus that developed started reconciling all the new energy coming in versus the old energy that we're still holding on to. Please note in the last section, that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, I mentioned that the last conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn was in Taurus in 2000, right? And that there was going to be another conjunction here in Gemini, right on the cusp, in 2060. And so technically it was going to be in an air sign, but realistically it actually touches on the 29th degree of Taurus, which points to the previous era, 200-year period, in which the conjunctions were happening in Earth signs. So this idea that we're really into the air triplicity that we've moved in is not quite accurate. We still have one little data point coming up in 2060. All of us are going to be really old. But anyway, we're still... there's still other phase in which the things happening in the world will pertain to the events that happened between 2000 and 2020, and more specifically between the 19th century and the 21st century. So from 1800 to 2020, right? So the air time. So we're still, that whole idea that the end of the Earth age is over, it's not quite accurate, and it's going to sort of taper out. The more dramatic events have happened now, up to 2020. That was the crescendo, but there still will be latent effects leading out until 2060 through 2080. So it's not over yet. That's the important thing to realize. And so yes. However, what was I saying? Oh, and so this old energy was still sticking around. And so that's the Uranus-Saturn square. Saturn is kind of still holding on to old power structures, right? And Uranus is representative of all the new things that are coming in. And that's representative of this, increase of the air conjunctions between Jupiter and Saturn. and the other aspects, we're in a new phase essentially now, the beginning of the new phase. And so the square between Saturn and Uranus happened 3 times in 2021, in which we sort of saw a lot of world events come up to reconcile the past and the future. Now, Saturn and Uranus have also a pattern, a large astrological sequence in which they form a conjunction and then they separate and then they come together. It's much longer. It's like 50 years. The last time Saturn and Uranus joined together was 1988, and that was at the end of Sagittarius, where the moon is in this chart. And so now, so we have the pattern of Jupiter and Saturn, but there's another layer to this in which Saturn and Uranus are interacting. And so this set of 4 squares between 2021 and 2022 was the last square of that pattern. And we are moving into a conjunction now between Uranus and Saturn in 2032, and we'll talk about this a lot in the future. This is a huge thing that will happen in Gemini. And so Saturn and Uranus are going to be joining together right at the end of Gemini in 2032. And so this square was a part of a bigger cycle between Saturn and Uranus that started in 1988. For many of us, that's our entire life. But you can kind of look back to pre this date. Like Reagan and Nixon, to me, really, like, they seem like similar. I know they're not the same, but they seem like similar energies. And then from 1988 on, we had like Clinton, Bush, those kinds of presidents. I always kind of mark long periods of time by presidents in my mind. But yeah, so you can see those early 80s and late 70s times as being distinctly different than the ones moving forward. And so the pressure that was formed by the square of Saturn and Uranus in 21 and 2022 really exemplified the issues and the circumstances that have been being worked out since 1988. So when you're writing all this down, ask yourself, what happened since 1988 in my life and what moved forward? And the actual conjunction happened from October 1st through November 8th, 1988, if you're curious about that. So yeah, we're moving into the last phase, and now these are bigger. And so Jupiter-Saturn pattern is 20 years. The Saturn-Uranus pattern is like 50 years. So these are growing and magnifying, and they're more like larger cohorts. They're, you know how we say generations? Well, they're different lengths of generations. And so they encompass more. They have their own qualities. And so there was 4 conjunctions. I think we've gone over them a lot, so I'll just tell you the dates right now for brevity. But there was the February to March 2nd conjunction and square in 2021. And so this was a heavy Aquarian phase. That's what we're seeing here. And so, and Lilith was with Uranus in Taurus. So there was a lot of like suddenly bad things that had shown up in the world, or people, I don't know, being smart and trying to, and I don't mean that in a positive, like people being smart and trying to manipulate things. So there was a lot of the problems that we had in 2022 originated back in that time. Then we had the second square that occurred between most of June in 2021. I wouldn't say that that was a bad one. Saturn and Uranus were on a square and they weren't really near anything else. So that was a standalone. The final main square happened between December 16th and the 31st. So most of December. Let's take a look at this one just so I can remind you. I talked about this a lot, so you guys probably remember. And so this was December 16th through the 21. And again, this was the perfect square, and there was a lot happening. It was at that time that the nodes changed signs into Taurus and Scorpio. And so that makes this square and the 2022 square different from the previous ones. And so this gave more weight to this forward moving energy of Taurus, of where we are going, but in some way also reconciling those previous dates that I mentioned as well. So really pushing forward. And in 2022, so let me just show you guys this. We had our final, let's see, square, and this was because Saturn had turned retrograde and had moved back very, very close to Uranus. See, we have Uranus at 17 degrees 51 minutes and Uranus at 18 degrees, so just 1 degree orb. So we saw also in 2022 the kind of perpetuation, the push forward of this, and things, for me, it's subtle, and I don't think we are seeing it yet, to be honest, but I think that there was a shift. There was also an eclipse that happened. Let me just double check. There was an eclipse that happened, in 2021, never mind. But there was a fundamental shift in this last square where it felt as though the energy was pushing forward. I forgot to mention this to you guys. There was also a conjunction here, remember? A conjunction between Uranus, North Node, and Mars on August 1st. That was preceding this by a couple months. And everything from last summer until last winter, there was a real, suddenly, a feeling of we're being taken somewhere by everything that's happening. Like suddenly people started becoming very assertive in what they want. And suddenly, and especially when we're talking about like people of power and where things are going, suddenly there was an agenda. Like suddenly certain people had figured out what they wanted to do with things and they pushed forward this agenda. Suddenly there was this, there was this, there's a plan. It felt like a plan had been put into place. Now, I'm not suggesting a conspiracy theory. I don't think that there's like necessarily like overlords that got together on a hilltop and decided a plan. That's not what I'm saying. But all these people with power in their minds or independently or in small groups got together and figured out their next trajectory with this conjunction. And so this was once again people asserting themselves. So I don't want to suggest, conspiracy theory kind of stuff. Okay. And so that last square in 2022, this is October 2022, interacted in a fundamental way with the last phase of Saturn in Aquarius. And that is Saturn squaring the nodes, which actually happened a lot last year. So you can see this now. It was actually the square started before this final square between Uranus and Saturn. We talked about this a lot last year. I didn't do a lot of videos last year, but this I really wanted to talk about. So let's take this back. Oh yeah, the square. Okay, so the square of the nodes, you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. This is the next phase of Saturn in Aquarius, and a lot in terms of where we are going. You've also probably heard me say that the nodes, that there's some debate about where the nodes are ruling or where they're mainly placed. Some people say that the nodes rule Gemini and Sagittarius, or they rule Taurus and Scorpio. I have a feeling that it might be Taurus and Scorpio. Whatever it is, it's somewhere over here. And it specifically, the North Node would be Taurus, South Node Scorpio, South Node Sag, or North Node Gemini. But it's somewhere over here that something very important happens astrologically. And there's a lot of debate about that. That's why I'm not suggesting it, but which one it is. But the fact that Saturn began to square the nodes last year, and in March 2022 to July 22, and then there was another series into the fall, but less intense in which Saturn was squaring the nodes. And so again, it was processing everything that was going on, or it was pushing forward everything that had been initiated. So I talked about this before, but just in case you missed it, Saturn squaring the nodes in this position, it's almost like the beginning stages of this whole, so we had the conjunction with Jupiter, and then we had the Uranus square in which we were tossing and turning between the past and the future. And now Saturn squaring the nodes is pushing us yet again into how we will implement all that. And so in the world at large, there was yet another phase of implementation of plans and strategies and what people wanted to do. And you may have noticed that as well in your personal life, where you in 2022 started kind of picking up the pieces and what are we going to do? What's the one thing that happened? Going back to work, there was this huge push for stopping people from working from home and taking them back to work and into offices. And towards the end of the year, there was the layoffs that had begun happening in tech. So there was a lot of different phases to employment, people reorganizing themselves, quiet quitting, which is a problematic term, but there was a lot of reorientation. And so Saturn squaring the nodes really marks the third and final phase of Saturn in Aquarius, the first one marking the conjunction with Jupiter, the second one, the back and forth with Uranus in 2021 and 2022, the past and the future. And when that conjunction happened in Taurus with the North Node, that marked the beginning of the square with the nodes in which there was a significant push forward. So that last square between Uranus and Saturn was fundamentally different. Not only were the nodes in Taurus and South Node in Scorpio, but it was that after that conjunction. And so suddenly we started pushing towards this whole new game, this whole new situation, whatever it is. I know it's not a game, but look at the times that I provided and you'll be able to see that. In 2023, and this is my final kind of phase, so you understand where you're standing at when we're talking about 2021. In 2023, we've also had several different transits marking the midway point between the nodes, the midpoint or bending the nodes. And so they do this every year. However, because of Saturn's transit, it's really important to kind of reflect on that, asking ourselves where we are actually going in our life. And so January 10th, Venus squares the nodes. Then on the 28th, the Sun squares the nodes. On the 16th, Mercury squared the nodes. And then when we're looking at March 7th, I want to show you this chart last, March 7th, 2023, we see another square on the nodes on the other side of the chart, and that's Lilith in Leo. And so March 7th is an important date because this is when, look, I got it right on the money, Saturn enters into Pisces, and we have a full moon in Virgo, and we'll talk about that a lot more. But the fact that Lilith is squaring the nodes on the other point, you guys have heard me say that I said Aquarius is in a low point energy. It's kind of the beginning of something here. And Lilith here represents to me the high point or some maximum energy. And so this maximum energy, in my opinion, there's good things and bad things that Saturn and Aquarius has done, but the bad with Lilith in Leo, it seems as though something that is nefarious or bad, below the surface, negative, may break through. There may be a breakthrough moment. Like, remember when I mentioned that Jupiter, Saturn and Mercury are going to join in Aquarius in the Anaretic degree, and you'll hear a certain type of truth about everything that happened since all these transits started. I think that when Lilith gets to this point, something that's been below the surface and brewing behind the scenes might transpire. I don't want to say what, but be aware that this energy is here. There's more to it than that. It's not a coincidence. And through this time, we also see the conjunction with Chiron, Jupiter, and Venus. Venus is nice in this position, but especially Chiron and Jupiter in this position, Jupiter makes things big, so it might really magnify some kind of situation. Let's hope it's for the better, but it's going to set the pace for the next phase, which is Jupiter in Pisces. And we've already did a video on that, and you can watch that if you're interested. But yeah, so very interesting transit, very interesting times. I hope I explained it to you guys well. I hope you guys get it. So, okay, so now let's switch signs into, let's switch into your personal charts, and let's talk about how that will affect your sun, moon, and rising. And do watch for sun, moon, and rising. Remember, I've been around for a while, so you want to make sure to like and comment to keep seeing my videos. It tells we're not doing anything, you know, insidious or something wrong. Just you're telling the algorithm that you want to see my content. So I don't mind. I like when you say hi. So you say hi to me and leave a comment, and you'll get more videos from me. Okay, so let's take a look at the astrology for Taurus. And I'll go pretty quickly for this because we had a long explanation. But let's take a look. I'm pretty happy with what I've explained, and I hope you are as well. I hope you're seeing the mechanism of the things that are happening. Taurus, sun, moon, and rising. Let's see your energies for the upcoming Saturn Anaretic degree position. So we see it right there. Okay, so hold on. Oh yeah, Mercury's already entered Pisces. So this is on March 2nd at night. Mercury's really fast sometimes, so he can go through several degrees. So this is still the second when they make the conjunction, but the ingress into Pisces is also on that day. Okay, so for Taurus, so for you, there's definitely some kind of a coming to realization about career and your positions in career. I would say that Saturn through the 10th house, through the current times, may have been incredibly challenging. It may have brought you to some very intense decisions about work, about where you stand in the world. Let's see what's here. Judgment, Prince of Pentacles, big decisions that are being made. Look at this, Empress, Venus. Okay, so I have a feeling that Tauruses who had this transit in their 10th house are reorienting who they are in terms of career fundamentally. So basically you've gone through these three different phases and have realized that, you know, some of the things that you were going through in your life were not okay. This is already a person who's made decisions. This is a person who has taken their power back. So I think that by Saturn in this position here, you've already taken your power back. And I think that you're making your decisions about which way you're going to go. I think there may be still I usually don't read like devil as a bad card, but this to me really feels as though there is possibly someone who is threatening or who had been threatening in your career and in your public life, and a big part of the struggle has been the navigation of this person. But I think you're making huge decisions and, you know, taking your power back in your career, and I think that you're you're not gonna play their game anymore. That's what I'm getting from this. So watch for your rising sun and moon as well, and maybe you'll get a complete picture. But there's this definitely an energy of, I'm not here to, you know, waste my time sort of thing. I'm not gonna play those games. Okay, so we have Capricorn next. Let's take a look at your energy here, sun, moon, and rising. So when we're looking at Aquarius, for you, this is the second house. And we've already talked about, for Capricorns, I think that there's been the main theme of Saturn and Aquarius has been making the tough decisions in order to get to where you want to be and what kind of situation you want to be in. Okay. And so some of that came with a significant amount of sacrifice. And I think that you've been waiting for the right time to move forward. You've done what you've had to do. I think that many of you have sacrificed a lot of personal experiences in order to achieve your goals. But look, we have such an affirming card suggesting that there's going to be a positive outcome. For many of you, this may be a change of home or change of direction. You're literally going to move. It's almost like, you know, some people move to faraway places like Alaska or something to do their job and then they come back home. This feels like that. Like you've gone somewhere to do something and now it's time to go back. And that can be literal moving, or it could be figurative, which means that, you know, it's time to get back to other people. I do have a feeling that a change of environment is necessary to achieve that. I think that some of the people you're around just don't make good quality, you know, I'm not saying I don't think of people as quality, but I think that maybe they're not necessarily the best for you. They reflect a time in your life when you've really had to focus to achieve your financial goals and dreams. And so they may not be the right people for socializing moving forward. I don't know. So yeah, 2.5 years gone. Another 2 to go. Next sign is Scorpio. Let's take a look at your astrology. Okay, Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising. Let's take a look at what's going on for you with this anaretic degree of Saturn, and that's in the fourth house of home, family. So for many of you, you have gone through possibly a loss of family. Somebody has passed away. This is in the last 2.5 years. I'm not predicting for the future. You may have changed what your home is about or where your home is. You made some significant changes. Maybe some of those changes were hard or involved a sacrifice, but they were for a bigger purpose, a bigger reason. We have the Ace of Swords and the Tower. Mercury conjunction there. For any Scorpios who have refused a change, you might be surprised by some information. And then we have the moon. Okay. Some information is coming in that's going to be a surprise maybe this is a reflection of what happened while Saturn was in Aquarius. You got some information that was a surprise, unexpected changes that you had to deal with. But I think that you had a very strong position, or you've taken a very strong position in dealing with these things. You've had very private thoughts about it, which means that you've had your own opinions about the things that happened, about the things you've seen, whether in your home, family, or house, if it's not like a home, if it's just where you live. The moon suggests that you come out of this Saturn and Aquarius phase with private thoughts and opinions that you haven't shared with others. I think that there's a fundamental change in the viewpoint of other people that you've gone through, and I think that you feel stronger for it. I also have a feeling that maybe in the past you have shared your thoughts and opinions, but the things you've come to realize are the things that you've come to decide about life or circumstances. You don't need to share for whatever reason. You've gained autonomy. I think that it's kind of some type of autonomy that you've gained from, distancing yourself. Okay. Let's see the next message. We have Aquarius, sun, moon, and rising. Let's see. Hi, Aquarius. So Aquarius, of course, since this transit is happening in Aquarius, this was a very significant time. Let's pick 6 cards for Aquarius, since they've had to go through that. The fact that it's such a interesting moment in time, 2.5 years, is very, very important that it happened in your sign. This is your ruler, and he's not going to be back for another 20 years. So your life will be fundamentally different then. We're going to be on a different phase of Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. So it's going to be a huge change. Okay. So what has happened with Jupiter in your first house? I think so there's a two things going on here. The squaring the nodes is particularly important for Aquarius because your transits, whatever placements you have, square the nodes as well. And so as Saturn is squared the nodes, and as all these other transits I mentioned in the astrology squared the nodes, I have a feeling that you didn't hit rock bottom, but you hit like a bottom of energetic signature to the things that had happened. The things that had happened around you have reached a bowl or a lull, and so now you're heading into a new direction. Saturn in Aquarius likely had really challenged you on a personal level. You had possibly been defined by others in ways you had never been defined before. You had really found out where you stand and where others stand by virtue of the way that they talk to you, by the virtue of how they interact. That's what I wanted to see. I have a feeling that you've been set free from circumstances by people saying things about you and by circumstances defining how others feel about you. I think that you've become empowered, but that empowerment came at the cost or the expense of some kind of failed reconciliation with others. You wanted something from others. You wanted friendship or connection, and maybe it wasn't there. And so now you move forward because you're no longer tied to their ghosts. You're no longer tied to their, the memories of them. It might have been a difficult time for some of you guys, but now you're heading up and now you're no longer compromised. Someone said that to me, a guy that I dated briefly said, let's break up because I don't want us to compromise each other anymore. And I was furious when that happened. But then I came to realize that that was a very mindful way of, he was from another country. And after some time, I felt that was like such a mindful way of treating another person. So not compromising them for your own benefit or, in a situation that wasn't going to work out. So I thought that was really nice. So in other words, that ties into you, Aquarius, because it's like circumstances can really compromise you. And so sometimes it's hard when you have this Saturn in the first house and you realize that you're not received in the way that you thought you were being received, but in some way you're no longer playing a fake game with others. Okay. So Gemini is next. I love that for Aquarius. I can really feel that's on point for you. Okay, Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising. So for you, this transit is happening into the 10th house. The one thing that I'll say about Saturn in the 10th house for anyone who's experiencing this transit, it's a very mindful time to not rock the boat in terms of career, and especially with what's going on with the labor market right now. Don't rock the boat with regard to career and public things. Don't make changes, preemptive changes, before you know what's going on. There's a 2.5 year ahead time that you're going to have to deal with. And so be careful what you are getting yourself into before you do. Here, what we're seeing is there's look at these are such romantic cards for Gemini. There's a huge orientation towards love. There's a huge orientation towards love or a focus on a relationship. I could see some Geminis being enticed by falling in love again, the prospect of falling or growing deeper in love with their partner. This might be a time in which they feel really ready to kind of change things and welcome in offers again. So in tandem with the astrology, my cautionary tale is be careful how you do it. Go fall in love, go have fun. But I think that it's also important for you to consider how you do it, because Saturn in the 10th house is a serious transit. And so a lot can happen, a lot can change. And with the current economy and how things are happening, you want to be very careful with throwing things away. So in other words, falling in love with someone, hey, I'm going to move to a different city, quit my job, and move on. And then something doesn't work out or something changes and you're without a job. So be very careful with making really big decisions. That's moving forward. I just felt called to say that. But in terms of the ninth house transit, the Aquarian transit, I have a feeling that maybe your feelings changed towards someone, or you had like those higher level thoughts about the world, or your circumstances with regard to others have changed. I think that you're probably like maybe someone you had written off, or a situation you had written off, or even the possibility of love that you have written off. You have sort of reconsidered it in a different level. I think that your priorities have changed and you're much more comfortable with picking and choosing where your heart goes and where your affections are going. And that goes into all sorts of relationships. Remember, the transit in Capricorn was so brutal for Geminis. I still get messages about how hard it was for you guys. And now enough time has passed and this Pluto exits Capricorn and all these planets move out of your 8th house. You've done a fair bit of healing from all the things that happened through that transit. So I feel as though this is the thawing event for you in terms of relationships and love, and you're a little bit more open to building those up again or trying new things. Just cautionary, be careful of just throwing energy around too much. Okay, Cancer's next, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Let's take a look at your energy. Okay. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Let's take a look at what's going on for you. So we're focusing more on Saturn in Aquarius in the 8th house. For you, that could have meant a lot of fundamentals. I feel like you changed. You separated from relationships, and especially intimate relationships that you had. You may have felt suddenly that you were ready to separate. You may have felt very subject to love, like you love someone so deeply you couldn't live without them. But I think that now it's much easier, and I think that many of you are super excited that Pluto is leaving the 7th house, and so I think that there's this sort of depersonalization that's happening for you. And so you're much more excited about where things are going. And in the 8th house, you've probably made quite a bit of change. You could have actually very pruned out wherever your financial circumstances are tied up with others. So you may have very much kind of gone your own way or changed things up. Finally been able to say no to things. Look at this. Yeah, money's strong. Money's strong. Autonomy, money's strong. This is a very single card, the 9 of Pentacles. It's Virgo in Venus in Virgo. But we have the Wheel of Fortune and the 8 of Wands. I just see confidence coming out of you here. 10 of Pentacles, knowing who's important and where the important things are in your life. So it's like you've come out of this transit in Aquarius, and I think that that for you more than anyone else is coinciding with this Capricorn transit of Pluto. More autonomous, breakaway, ready to push away the past. You probably came into these transits quite naive, quite ready to fall in love and with the hope of loving and that being the end goal. And many of you at this point possibly have even given up falling in love, and you're completely confident in that. You're happy in that. It's a celebration. And that doesn't mean that you're alone. It just means that you're not a sucker to love anymore. And I think that that's the message of Saturn in the 8th house for you. You're not in these situations in which you're compromising yourself or putting yourself in a worse situation with someone you don't even want to be there just to be with someone, all those kinds of things. I think Saturn in the 8th house helped you to let go emotionally from that, because we can stop doing these behaviors, but then we still want them. And I think that as we find you at 29 degrees of Aquarius, your Saturn, you don't even care. And that's wonderful. Because then you can hopefully, if you do want to find someone, or if you do find someone, you're no longer confounded by making low-level decisions or emotionally driven decisions. They're confident decisions now. So you go frolic and be awesome. Okay. So next is Pisces. Here we go. Let's get weird. Let's see what we have for Pisces for this transit. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising. So we're looking at the Saturn entering into your sign. So that's also significant. But we're really focusing on the 12th house. For Pisces, I do sense that there's a lot of isolation, to be honest. There's a lot of isolation from other people through the progress of your mind and consciousness. So this isn't isolation because if bad things happened, I bet they happened because you were thinking differently suddenly, and you weren't kind of falling in line to you know, the agreements that you had made that were actually going against what was good in a situation or what was right. We have 9 of Pentacles, 4 of Wands, and the Chariot. 9 of Wands, sorry, 4 of Wands and the Chariot. I feel as though that there's a real, like, being born. This is your card, by the way, Cancer. So you are represented. And we have Tower. Breakthrough moment. You're gonna make a huge and significant change. And as Saturn enters your first house, that's probably that is very, very significant. Saturn entering your first house, in some way, you already see it coming. You already see what's coming because you've really figured out what you want to see in the world while Saturn was in Aquarius. I think that probably your vision of the world, of what the world is, has really changed with this transit. I think that you are a different person in relation to the world. And as Saturn finishes its transit, priority difference, change in perspective. You don't see the world as the same way anymore. And you don't see the people in it in the same way anymore. You're completely pulled yourself away from all of them. And so as Saturn enters Pisces, expect quite a bit of criticism from that. But all I can say to you is, as it does, I hope that you have the resilience to not back off the things that you know now. So, and especially maybe March 2nd, you can write down what you see about yourself, what you see yourself as different, or what you see about the world, and keep that nearby so that when Saturn is in Pisces and this new version of you is being challenged by the onlookers, you can go back to that so they don't pressure you, or they don't distract you from what you found when you were paying attention to the world. Okay, so I think that's huge. And I don't know if that sounds very ambiguous. It's not meant to be, but I think that, yeah, I just think, and this Tower is suggesting some kind of, you're moving fast towards something and there's a very fast change. But I think that that's in line with you not, it's almost like the way you see things has completely changed. Okay, so good. I think it's cool. And I think it's going to be a good transit for you, Saturn and Pisces. Watch my other video about Saturn and Pisces with Neptune. Okay, so let's see a Virgo. Hey, Virgo. Okay, so Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Let's take a look at your transit. Okay, so Saturn for Virgos is in the 6th house of work. This is the house that Virgo rules in a natural chart. But for you, it's the 6th house. Listen, the themes of the things that get in the way have been very strong for the last 2.5 years. You have been given a blueprint of exactly how things work. And it's very good for you to reflect upon that in the last week of Saturn in Aquarius. So what kind of people cause you problems? How do those situations look? Where do those situations evolve to? So there's also this energy of like things that you worry about that work out fine if you just stop worrying. 5 of Pentacles. you also know like where not to go and where you can go, and you should make your decisions. That's what I think. I think that it's almost like figuring out a strategy before you implement it, and then following it through as you are playing it out, seeing it through or seeing it out. So with Saturn in the 6th house, it's the mechanics of how your life works has been shown to you with these 3 phases. And with the Uranus conjunction, which happens to be in your 9th house, this is one of my favorite transits for any sign, of this Uranus conjunction that happened in August 1st, 2022. You have a way through, and with Saturn here in Aquarius, really figure out how things work and how to manage them. This is how this person treats me. That's how I can interact with them. This is how this situation, what I want to happen. It's like the master strategy. You're in a position of master strategy. And so you know what the limitations are. You know what you want. Look at how beautiful this card is. The 3 of Wands. You know what you want. You know what you want to elevate. And you know the things that are limiting you, and the walls, the things that are difficult. So you need to make your decisions now, Virgo, about how you're going to proceed. And I think you should follow through with what you've decided. Okay? So that's pretty, I like that a lot. Okay. I'm going through this. It's very Saturnian, very to the point, but I hope it's helpful. Okay, so we have next we have Aries. Hi, Aries, and I'm more and more excited to talk to you guys. So watch my videos for the next little while, because there's a lot going on in Aries that I'm excited to tell you guys about. Okay, so Aries, Sun, Moon, and Rising. You already have Venus and Jupiter conjunction here with Chiron. For you, that's massive healing. More than any other sign, that conjunction is so beautiful in the heart of your sign. And so essentially, you know, you've been very successful, and yet you took a battling ram to your gut, to your self-esteem. And this conjunction is bringing in something for you that's going to really elevate that. It's going to make you feel much better, and it's going to make you feel like find a solution to the things that trouble you. We have the moon. Okay. So these, mixed feelings. You're probably pretty tired. And for Aries, the main thing is, it's like, hey guys, I'm here. And suddenly when Saturn was in your 11th house, nobody was clapping. Or maybe like this feeling that there was like the happiness of the people around you was just not there. So we have Aquarius, the star, 5 of Swords. And so that could have really done a number on your self-esteem. Princess of Cups. Somebody's coming in with very compassionate energy towards you. This could be a man or a woman, but it has that Princess of Cups energy, which is very conscientious of other people's feelings. Somebody's going to wean you back into the fold, which means that they're going to bring you towards other people again. I think you've had several years of high success, high progress, and high achievement, but I think it's probably done a number on your personal relationships, and that's Saturn as well. When Saturn goes through our 11th house, it can really purge us of friends, and sometimes we get left with a few if we're lucky, but sometimes you get left with very little friends at the end of Saturn in 11th house. You don't really tell that to people when the Saturn transit starts, because it's traumatizing, but now that it's at the 29th degree, maybe you are ready for a fresh start. So you may still have friends, but you may be disconnected from them emotionally or in another way. And so this Princess of Cups to me suggests that, somebody coming in to help you out, to kind of get you warmed up emotionally. Somebody very sweet, very nurturing. And I think that you still have dark feelings about how you've been treated by others. And I think that you're still hurt by how other people have treated you. But I think that also you're getting some very nice energy of uplift right now, and especially through this Aries area in your chart. And so it's easy to let go of the things that weren't working. You're very, not all Aries, depending on your chart, but very much water under the bridge kind of people for the most part. You're happy to move along. And so maybe part of the frustration has been that the things that have happened for you socially or interacting with others have been pessimistic to the degree that you've lost your joie de vivre, you've lost your little spunk. And so this person comes in with a little compassion, and you're like, oh, hey, people can be okay. Like, I can be actually excited about hanging out with you or spending time. Could be all sorts of different relationships. If in certain situations, and this doesn't mean everyone, Lilith is in your 5th house, and with this card, I would give a little bit of a warning. If you find yourself getting close with someone, man or woman, whoever you date, if you're single, be careful of falling into love with a friend. That's what I'll say. Be very cautious with it. Lilith has entered into your 5th house. And this could suggest, and because it's opposite to the 11th house and everything just said, I just get the sense that you might get very excited about a new friend and you both may mutually like each other a bit more, but it might be like a false hope or a false situation. So in order to persevere your friendship, because I feel like this person's very sweet, you may want to taper that. Lilith is in Leo for a while, but I mean, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So Lilith will be in Leo until the fall. So I would just even say wait until the fall to see it through. But then you can get to know this person and see if you like them. So there's this feeling like, sometimes when we overshare when we haven't talked too long, or there's overly nice when we're kind of lonely. So be careful with getting overly excited about someone who's very nice, a nice friend, and attributing to that something more, and then like mismanaging it. I don't think something bad will happen. I think essentially that you run the risk of having a romance and then losing a friend through it, right? Which might not be the sacrifice you're looking for. Okay, so just take your time with this new friendship. It's very nice. It's waking you up, which is great. Okay, so next we have Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Let's take a look at your energy. Libra. Okay. Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising. And so Saturn had been through your 5th house, Libra. This is really bad for romance. And I'm not laughing. It's just everybody has to go through it. It's a damper transit for romance, and we all have to get through it. 6 of Wands. So through that time, if you're out there dating, there may not be so many different opportunities, or the ones that happen may fall flat. We have 6 of Wands and the 2 of Cups. But now in the Anaretic degree, you've probably learned a lot about, what kind of people you want to interact with. You've learned about what kind of people you want to stay clear of. I really get the feeling that many of you have had varying different experiences, and it feels like a real hodgepodge of people. I think many of you are choosing like a friend or someone reliable or someone who you already know to put your romantic feelings towards, rather than like lost romance or chasing something that isn't there. I have a feeling that some wise decision making could have made some of you in a really good situation in love. And this 29th degree may leave you much wiser in the way of love than you had previously expected. I think that many people with Saturn entering the 5th house, they worry like, oh, what is it going to do for my social life, for my love life, whatever. But it's in the 29th degree where you're like, I'm really glad that happened, because I was such a fool and I was shooting myself in the foot and it was not working out. And now I have a strategy that makes sense that puts me in a better situation and that I don't sacrifice myself. So I think that there's a lot of hope that has come through. This could be a friendship that has blossomed into a much closer relationship. They feel like a couple. They feel like a very happy pair, the Queen of Swords and the Prince of Pentacles. Like, they feel like friends. So I hope you have a friend like that. Two of Cups here and Six of Wands. Saturn in the 5th house could be leaving Libras in a very good position. A confidence, or, you know, there's a trust that I feel between these two when I see them together like this. So maybe it was all worth something. And if you're still single, or if you're in a marriage that you don't like, maybe Saturn has taught you some very big lessons about your relationship with the people that you have interacted, and gained you an idea of what you want. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe it's less the romance and the craziness, and maybe more someone who respects your mind, someone who's smart, someone who's got your back, someone who's not questionable, you know? When I say questionable, meaning like you don't question their intentions or their motives because they're solid and they're straightforward. So maybe you've come to realize those things through your last couple years. Okay? So the energy for Libra is very like grounded and very focused on priorities and what works and what's great. Okay? So thank you guys for that. And next we have Sagittarius. Okay, so let's see Sagittarius. Let's see what's going on for your sign. Sagittarius. Saturn through the 3rd house. Okay. Saturn through the 3rd house is very intense for relationships with like cousins and brothers, sisters, siblings. You may have, through this transit, really had a lot of changes with regard to your sibling relationships. Someone may have moved away, or maybe you guys had changed, you know, the dynamics between the two of you guys. The understanding's different. But maybe also come closer. I feel like closer together at 29th degree. Closer together, happy. Look at this sun. You're the only one who's gotten the sun so far. 5 of Pentacles. Somebody's been struggling. I feel like maybe you've really wanted to help a sibling or someone, a cousin, someone around your age, but maybe they have been protecting themselves, or maybe they have been not letting you in as much as you really wanted to help. You personally may have found a lot of financial success, but I have a feeling that through this transit in the 3rd house, either you really wanted to help them and they weren't really there, or you really wanted to have this relationship of reciprocal help, and for whatever reason that's been a struggle. Because of all the other cards, it feels like you're in a happy, strong place, and someone you care about is struggling and you can't get them to compromise with you. That's the struggle. And there's a lot of sympathy there towards someone else's difficulties or the challenges that they're going through. And you just wish that there could be help that you can give them. Somebody's unwilling to receive help, or maybe somebody's being avoidant. You know how some people, when they have problems, they just distance themselves rather than tell you. So they don't necessarily want intervention, and you're like, but I want to help. And that it feels like a long-term thing, longer midterm, like a couple years. So it might be a couple years now that someone's not around as much or not as available. So I hope you figure it out. It looks like your life is very good. Queen of Cups, 6 of Pentacles, the Sun. And you just want to share it with someone. But I feel as though at 29th degree, they're not available. And you may understand by the 29th degree what that change is all about. Remember the 3 different parts. So look at those years and figure out how that affects your relationship. Okay, so that's Sagittarius. Last but not least is Leo. Hey, Leo. There's a lot coming up for Leo right now. And so the whole reading sort of ended on, and I don't know if I highlighted it for any other sign, but for you, on Lilith squaring the nodes. And so because Lilith is in your sign, that's probably referring to you the strongest. And so for you, with this square in Saturn in the 7th house, you may have gotten a certain kind of response from others in relationships. I'll say this. Something may have been building up to frustrate you or irritate you, Leo. There may have been considerable change and consistent pressure on you to react a certain way, okay? And this Saturn squaring the nodes and Saturn in the conjunction with Jupiter, this is layer upon layer of new energy and new energy breaking through. The warning sign for Leo is very clear here. It's be careful. I see a situation that could be building up with tension in terms of how somebody around you is treating you, somebody who should be great. And I see an outburst potential here. This doesn't mean that you will have an outburst. An outburst already may have happened when Uranus and North Node and Mars joined in August 2022. However, with Lilith here, and especially until March 7th when Saturn moves into Pisces, and March 7th inclusive because that's Virgo full moon, I could feel you very irritated by someone or someone's behavior, so be careful of lashing out at them. It could lead to potential changes and lots of fundamental changes around you. At this point, you might be feeling very frustrated with, you want those partnerships to be more solid, or maybe there's been a consistent pattern of a lack of solidity in certain relationships. And so here at the 29th degree, you really want to fight the urge to push back. But then also on the positive note, you really see where your relationships are at, so you really understand what's going on. And that gives you an idea of where to go forward. I know you want to respond or react to something very quickly, but I think that with this transit, you don't have to rush. This will plan out in the long run. And it's going to be a better strategy for you to play the long game on this one. Okay, so don't react to, in other words, somebody could be frustrating you, but a situation could be frustrating you, or someone could be frustrating you, and you need to fight the urge of reacting at least till March 8th or 9th. And I think that by March 8th or 9th, you may not be feeling the tension as much anymore, but specifically on those dates. That's a bit of a warning sign. So just, hold on. See, there's those feelings. There's those kind of pent up feelings about something. You have good things going on, Leo. I'm not trying to suggest anything's off. And in fact, probably your frustration comes from the fact that you have better things going on than what they're offering. So at a certain point in time, the way they behaved was okay. Maybe the way they behaved was okay and your standards went up. Or sometimes people's treatment of us degrades over time and they're not doing the same things anymore. But here, be very careful of us. And even if they initiate conversation with you about something problematic, or that really you're in the right and you want to talk to them about it and say this is wrong, wait until after the 10th at least. Give yourself time. And don't initiate a big change with this. But it's probably it's kind of like an audit of all your friends and your closest brethren, your closest people. And they've been doing unfortunate things, and you're probably in the right to be upset, but I don't think it's not going to be good for you to have to confront it now. I don't think it's going to lead to the outcome you want. Okay. So this Lilith can make you feel like, I want to tell them off. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And so so back off of that, and it might be very justified because Saturn has been showing you that. Saturn has shown you exactly like the case history, all the data points that you need to know. So I know that that can feel like you're ready to act on that, but it's actually helpful information for the long term, and there will be plenty of opportunities for you to assert yourself in not like a directly confrontational way. Okay? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had fun reading your cards today and telling you about Saturn. Let me know again if you guys are interested in a more in-depth. I really went through the astrology super fast. So if you're a member and you want a specific reading, or if a ton of people want more on this astrologically only, let me know in the comments if something's not clear, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.